Is happiness a choice? That's one of the questions that I want to talk about today, and happiness in general. And I also want to talk about fakeness, especially in this social media culture that we live in. Are people fake? Or should I say, are people truly fake? As fake as they come off, at least. I just finished reading a really difficult read called The Happiest Man on Earth. It's about an Auschwitz. Is that how you say Auschwitz? I realize I've never really had to say that word before. Auschwitz survivor. No, let me get this right. Okay, yes, Auschwitz. Not every day you say that word, and then it makes me think about, do we not talk about it enough? I don't know. Is it becoming less and less discussed? I remember when I went to Auschwitz in Poland, and there was a big sign that said, "Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it." And those words have always stuck with me, seeing those words in this horrible, horrific, terrible, awful place on Earth that somehow exists on Earth, that somehow happened here on this planet. And it makes you realize like how important it is to talk about things of the past, because people don't learn from history. Even though they read about it, they see the awfulness, they still every day exhibit behaviors that mimic this hatred that has been a problem in our culture, in our world for so long. It's like we never learn, it seems. And reading this book, it was very difficult. I cried many times, and I've read different Holocaust survivors' stories. I remember growing up in Sweden, there was a gentleman that came to my school, and he spoke to us about his survival. And I remember he showed us the tattoo on his arm, and it just sinks in, like how this happened not that long ago on this earth that we live on. I don't know. It's just, it's really hard for me to read, because I think a part of my brain wants to say, this is fiction, this didn't happen, this is some crazy movie scenario, like this is a novel. And then you realize, no, this was real. All of these horrific things that happened were happening because of people, because of other people, and they're indoctrinating the way they were indoctrinated to believe all these horrific things. And despite all this horrific things that this man has encountered in his life, he just passed away. I just found out a couple years ago, right during COVID, I think. He was 101 years old, so he lived a long life, and he talks about, what he went through. It's a very short read, I would say. I mean, it's 180 pages, and I just finished it today, most of it. So it's not like it's a long read or anything. So I would recommend anyone read it, because he does want his story to be told. And it's interesting because he wrote this book when he was 100 years old. Like, this was one of the last things he did before he passed, because he didn't really want to tell his story. For a long time, he was struggling with it. He didn't want to share his story. But then he realized the importance of it, that we need to learn from this, because we are now experiencing these waves of hate again. Like, it just seems like we never learn as humans. It's like we see this awfulness, we read about it, or we hear our grandparents talk about what they went through, and then we go, that's so horrible. How can people be like that? And then you go out in society, and people can't even hold the door for you. They can't even give you a smile. They can't even be respectful. I was in the grocery store last night. I went to a different grocery store, because the one I usually go to is it has like this stench. And I this isn't me trying to belittle people who don't have the ability to bathe every day, but it's hard for me. I'm very sensitive to BO and that, and the energy, it just seems everyone's very like negative and kind of just disrespectful. I don't know. I don't enjoy being in there. So I like to remove myself of those situations. And I found another one that's close to where I live. And it was a much more pleasant experience. People smelled nice. I was like, oh, nice. People perfume, the little things that make me happy. But I saw this man. He looked to be about, I I would say in his 60s, maybe. He had pretty long gray hair, older white gentleman. Maybe I shouldn't call him a gentleman. That's just me being polite. He was very rude. And I just walked past him. I wasn't interacting with him at all, but I saw him interact with the person behind the deli counter. And I used to work in a deli, and you wouldn't believe this, but working in the deli is, first of all, it's a really stressful job, and you deal with some of the rudest people, and people are very particular exactly how they want their ham sliced or their cheese, or they want exactly this amount of egg salad. It can't be an ounce over. You know, they're just very particular. And I had one lady that would come in a regular back when I worked in the deli. This was probably close to 10 years ago. I don't know. It's been a while. And this lady would come in and she said, I was fairly new. I mean, I didn't work at that job for more than a summer. So what could I have been there, like 2-3 months? So I still hadn't been there for very long. And she goes, I want the Havarti. And she didn't say hello or nothing, just I want the Havarti. And I just asked her, because there was 2 types of Havarti. We had the Havarti with the dill and then the regular Havarti cheese. So I just wanted to make sure I had the right one. And she goes, what did she say? See, and this is just such a it's funny. We remember how people made us feel and the energy, but we don't always remember exactly what they said, because you realize it's so irrelevant. But man, the way people are and come off, it just sticks with you, because you're like, how can you be that way? But this lady, she was, I'm like making sure I'm recording on every end. I'm so paranoid now from all my mishaps with trying to film. Anyway, this lady immediately looks at me and goes, I don't remember. She said something like, get me someone else, or do you know what you're doing? Is this your first? She said something so unnecessarily rude. But basically she wanted someone else, and I went, absolutely. And I turned around and I grabbed one of my coworkers, and they went up. I think my coworkers, they both kind of pushed me up because they knew who she was. And as soon as she walked through the door, they were like, oh no, here we go. So she's just that kind of person. It's not like a one-time thing. Like, she was always upset, always angry. And as I'm walking away from her, she's going off about, I haven't ate dinner yet, and I have laundry to do. I don't have time for this. All because I asked her, did you want dill or regular Havarti? All because I wanted to make sure she got the right thing that she wanted. She was so mad at me. And you realize that people's anger has nothing to do with you. They're just projecting their own BS that they're going through. And I'm walking up, and my coworker, they were all like, you know, kind of consoling me. Or not consoling, but they were just like, we could deal with her all the time. She's just an asshole. And even one of my coworkers, I remember her saying, like, we haven't had dinner yet? Why? Like, are you the only one who hasn't had dinner yet? It was kind of a funny comment, I thought. People are like that. But anyway, the memory, I kind of remember that from when I walked past this guy yesterday at the deli who was being so rude to the guy behind the counter. He's like, is this your first day or something? And I'm like, that's all I heard walking by. And I'm like, there is no scenario ever, I don't care what the context is, that you should ever speak to somebody that way, where you should ever escalate a deli interaction to, is this your first day? Because it's such a dumb thing. What are you trying to get at? Okay, so what? Maybe it is their first day. Everyone's had a first day at a job. So I just think it's unnecessary. But anyway, then I go up to the counter, not the counter, what is it called? The checkout lane. And he's right behind me. His energy is just, you know, some people you can just feel it. They're tense, they're angry and mad at the world. And I was like, you know, the guy was helping me bag up my groceries, and he shouts at him not shouts, but it was a little too loud and very aggressive. He was like, hey, bagger guy, make sure let me bag my own groceries. Or the way he spoke to him was just like, bagger guy? Like, who says that to somebody? They're a person, and we have terms for people who you don't know their name. It's not like it's that difficult to be respectful. Excuse me, sir, do you mind if I pack my own groceries? But it's such a ingrained thing in some people, especially, I hate to say this, but it is that generation, the boomers and maybe even older. I don't want to say that they're all rude and all boomers are just disrespectful. That's not what I mean. There are some really polite, like my mom is a boomer. She's one of the nicest people I've ever met on this earth. But I'm just saying there's something in that culture, in that generation, that thinks that it's okay to boss people around because I'm paying your bills, I'm doing this. But I'm like, there's never any reason why you can't be respectful to somebody. You don't know who he is. Maybe he's working on a cure for cancer, and maybe you're going to need that in 10 years. You just never know who people are. It never makes sense to me in my little brain. How can we be rude to people that you don't know, especially people you don't know and people you love? That makes even less sense. Like, I heard something that stuck with me was, what was it? Being rude to your spouse is like keying your own car. And that's always stuck with me. Like, why be rude to the people we love? So it upset me, this interaction with this guy. Well, I didn't interact with him. I just watched his interactions with other people, and I went, wow, what a jerk. If you happen to be watching this and you see ants crawling all around me, it's because I'm dealing with an ant infestation, and it's really frustrating. I thought I had it taken care of weeks ago, and now they came back, and now they're crawling everywhere, and I feel like I'm spraying and vacuuming and trying to get rid of them, and I keep telling them, please leave because I'm going to kill you. I feel like this, I'm like reading this book about all this awfulness of mankind and what we're capable as human, or humankind, I should say. And I'm reading all this and I'm going, I feel guilty for killing an ant. I'm thinking about this and I'm going, I feel bad for these little tiny bugs and insects. And then you think about how humans are capable of killing other humans and torturing them. And you know, it's easy to think, because I think this way. I go, okay, well, I could never do that. You could never get me to be that way. Because even if I was indoctrinated as a young child, I would have been like, this is wrong. But then again, who am I to say that? Because I feel the way I feel now because I grew up with loving people. I grew up with people who taught me loving values. They taught me to love others. They taught me to love everybody, no matter what their skin color, religion, or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. So who would I be today if I hadn't been brought up that way? And it's easy to think, well, that could never be me, right? We easily remove ourselves from that, not realizing that we're all human and we're all capable of doing horrible, terrible things if we are brought to think that way. Our mind is a very powerful thing. So I think we need to remember that, and that's why it's important to talk about these things, so that these things don't happen, so that we can learn and be better human beings. I think I'm kind of going off topic, or what I was talking about with the grocery store interaction. See, this is the problem. I give all these little side stories and I get so far off the main topic, I don't even know where we ended up. I was talking about the guy yesterday at the store who bothered me. Why did I bring that up? I don't know. But it was sad to see. It was sad to see. I think I was talking about that generation being more likely to be angry and demanding of other people because they believe, well, I'm paying you or this and that, I have a right to be that way. But it's that type of thinking that gets us in trouble, right? Believing that we are somehow superior to other people, that we're better than them because we make more money, because we believe something different, because we look differently. And that's crazy, right? Wow, it's crazy what the mind is capable of creating, how destructive the mind can be. It's so powerful, yet it can be so destructive as well. I want to share a quote from the book. Eddie, his name is Eddie Yaku. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. Abraham, but his nickname was Eddie. Don't blame others for your misfortunes. No one has ever said that life is easy, but it is easier if you love it. If you hate your life, it becomes impossible to live. And that stuck with me. I think I can resonate with that a lot. I think it's so easy to put blame on everybody else, and it's their fault that this is like this, or my life is like this because of my parents, or I didn't have this, I didn't have that. But then you read this story about someone who went through all of the worst things that life could possibly throw your way. And he comes out saying, I'm the most blessed, lucky man alive. I have a beautiful wife and 2 beautiful children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. He lived this long life. I'm not saying that his life was perfect and amazing. Absolutely not. It was terrible what he went through. But the fact that he was able to come out of it and say, I'm a lucky man, that's powerful. That's really, really powerful. And I read this and I go, wow, I have 0 problems. I have 0 complaints. I can sit here comfortably, feel free. I have my freedom. I have food. I have everything I could need. I have a car. I can go wherever I want to. I can get on a plane and travel wherever I want to go. I can do all these things. Does that mean it's easily done? Does that mean I can easily take time off of work, that I can easily leave my commitments behind, that I can easily... No, it's not about easy. It's about what you're capable of. And that's what he's getting at. It's not that it's about ease. It's about possibility. You have to think beyond your struggles and how hard things are. And there's another book that I read, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And he was also a Holocaust survivor. And he was a psychologist who studied the behavior of the, I don't want to call them prisoners, because prisoners implies that they did something wrong and they were not prisoners. What's a better term for the victims? The victims, we'll just call them the victims of this. And he would study their behavior, and I remember reading, it really stuck with me. There was a surge of people who died between Christmas and New Year's, I think right before, so it would have been winter 1944. I might have that wrong, but I think it was right before the liberation of the camps. And a whole surge of people died because they were holding on to the hope that they would be freed by Christmas. And they were telling themselves, by Christmas we'll be home, we'll be reunited with our loved ones. And they held on to that belief. And that hope kept them alive. And then after Christmas passed and they were still there, a lot of people died. And they know this because there wasn't like an outbreak of anything that happened at that time. It wasn't anything physical. It was their mentality. And hope, we know this, hope really does keep you alive. If you have a hopeful mindset, if you are a fighter, that's why we say people, they're fighters, they're holding on to hope. It really makes a difference. We know this for a fact. So it's so important how you think of your life. And often they say a situation is far worse in our minds than it is in reality. I don't really like that when we're talking about this topic, because nothing, like, it's just so horrific to even try to comprehend. Even if you've been to tour one of these concentration camps, even if you've read the books and you've watched the movies and documentaries, nothing will ever come close to that experience of what they went through. Nothing you ever will see, hear about, read will ever put you in their shoes. So it's hard for me to say that quote in this context, but often that's the case. Often that's the case of our own lives. We go through the stress of, how am I going to pay my bills this month, and all these things. It is often far worse in our mind, because I think especially in today's society, we are programmed to be victim focused. We have a victim mentality rather than a solution mentality. How can I get myself out of this situation? Not, how do I make myself more comfortable in this awful situation? No, the focus should be survival, getting out, moving forward, going beyond what is current life if it's not healthy or sustainable. There was another one he kept repeating, another quote that I liked. He said, happiness is in your hands. And he says this a lot throughout the book. And I thought about that and I go, yeah, it's true. It's really not something that's out there in the future, because that's always what we're sold. It's like, it'll be there once you get the promotion, once you're rich, once you have all those things that you want, then you'll be happy. But happiness is in your hands. Happiness is a choice. Happiness is something that you can decide to be. And this kind of brings me back to the topic and why I brought this up, and how I mentioned earlier is like with fakeness and how we fake it till you make it. I'm trying to tie that all in, together here, because I think they're all related. Because so often we say, we're faking it when we say, oh, how are you? I'm fine, thank you. How are you? And I think that is a fake automated response, because we know it's polite. It's the polite thing to say. No one wants to know about my problem. So I say that so we can move on to the next thing, or so we can have an interaction and still treat each other like human. I think it's a polite thing to do, but I also agree with people when they say that it's fake and it's phony, right? But then again, I think of it this way. There's a lot of times where I say that and I go, well, I am fine. I am. Most of the time I am fine. I'm still breathing. I have my health and I have food and I have a safe place to sleep at night. So I am fine. Does that mean I'm thriving and everything's perfect and everything's going my way? And no, but it means I'm fine. It means I'm okay. I'm doing all right. And I usually tell people, what's my response when people say, how are you? I say, oh, no complaints. That's usually what I say. No complaints. Because I think about it, I'm like, what do I have to complain about? I'm not rich. I don't have everything I want in life. But I also don't have anything to complain about, especially when I read about what other people go through. I'm like, man, what do I have to complain about? If you have food in your fridge and a safe place to sleep at night and people who love you, that's worth so much more than any accolade or anything else in this world. But it's boring, right? So people want more, and then you have that, and then you want more, and then that's not enough. And that's why I like bringing it back to happiness is in your hands. My camera just cut off, so I'm not sure. Oh boy, this is a struggle. This is what happens when I go over. I think it cuts off at 20 minutes or something like that. Yeah, I was talking about how happiness is in your hands and you have the ability to look at a situation and make the most of it. And I like that I grew up that way. I wouldn't say I grew up poor, but I didn't grow up with luxury. We had our needs met and I never have starved. Maybe that's not considered poor then. I don't know. By Swedish standards, we were probably kind of poor. I don't know, whatever. It doesn't matter. But I just remember growing up and my mom was always so positive and she always taught me to see the possibility in things and use what you have. That was always her thing, especially with cooking. It's like, if we don't have all the ingredients, then let's use what we have. Let's substitute. And I've taken that and I've applied that mentality to every aspect of my life. Maybe I don't have everything, but what can I use from what I already have? Can I transform it into something else? Can I use the tools that I have? It's not ideal, but it works until I can upgrade, until I can afford to or have the time to or whatever to do or have more. So doing the best with what you got, I think that's the greatest mentality to have. I wrote down in my notes, if this Ellen DeGeneres thing is a facade. I know we're kind of switching course here. I'm just thinking about all the ants that are around me. You know when you think about it and you're like, oh, are they crawling on me? I don't know. They're so sweet. Little ants they're kind of cute and they're so smart and loyal. Man, when they die, they'll carry the other ants on their backs back to their home for, I don't know. I'm like, oh, these creatures are so smart, and I feel bad killing them. Anyway, but Ellen DeGeneres, if you don't know who that is, are you okay? How's life under your rock? I don't know. I think everyone knows who Ellen DeGeneres is. And I kind of watched her. I would watch her when my favorite celebrities were on her show. That was probably the only time I would watch little clips on YouTube. But she seemed like this really happy person, and she was always about kindness. She closed or ended every episode with, be kind to one another. That was her whole image and her whole thing, right? Her, what is that called when you have not a catchphrase. It's your slogan, your motto, I guess. I don't know. Her motto was, be kind to everybody. Be kind to one another. And she seemed like this nice, genuine person. And then all these stories came out pretty recently, in recent years, that she was actually kind of cruel behind the scenes, and she was kind of verbally abusive towards her staff, and people were overworked, and all these things were coming out. And then you go, was this all a facade? Was this be kind to one another a facade? And I try to look at it really objectively, and I can, because I'm not in the situation. I wasn't one of the people who worked for her. I don't know her personally. I have no idea what she's like in person. But I looked at it objectively and I thought, okay, well, for one, she is part of a generation that tends to be a little bit more direct and forget manners and, you know, just a little bit more, trying to put this politely, more rude. Okay, I'll just say that. A little bit more rude. And so I thought about that aspect, that people, maybe they're misinterpreting her, or maybe she is being a little bit too mean. And I don't know, because at some point there's two sides to every story, but I also don't believe in dismissing what a victim has to say of something. If they're like, well, this is what happened, I'm not going to go, well, you're just wrong. That doesn't help us at all as a society. That doesn't solve anything. But people did point out that she didn't really take accountability. I remember her apology that she sent out, or she posted on Instagram or something. She was like, you know, I'm not the best person always, or I don't know how she phrased it, but it was like, yeah, you know, I'm human. I'm working on myself. Sometimes I get angry. Sometimes I'm in traffic. I'm not always kind. And I was like, that was a very honest apology, I thought. But then some people were like, well, she never really took accountability. And again, I don't want to dismiss it, but I also think that generation, they just don't get this stuff, you know, like we're big on accountability and sincerity. Younger generations are big on how to treat people and respecting people's feelings. But older generations, they didn't grow up that way. So it's hard for them to maybe fully comprehend that. Again, I'm not saying every single one. I'm just saying, generally speaking, older generations probably have a harder time with that, because it's not how they were raised. It was all about, you go to work, you do as you're told, and you shut up. And I was kind of raised that way too. I remember if we had dinner and it was something I didn't like, it was like, well, you can eat it or you can go to bed hungry. Those are your options. It wasn't like, oh, you don't want this? Okay, well, we'll make you some pizza then, or you can have this. And part of me is like, I like that I grew up a little bit more in a more traditional sense, because it made me more tough. It made me able to deal with life a little bit better. I wasn't always so hesitant to not change. What am I trying to say? I was tough. I was a little bit more tough because of how I grew up. I just worry about kids now being a little bit too soft and not being able to handle the realness, I guess, of the world, because the world isn't always so kind, and the world isn't always going to be good. And that's just reality. I'm not saying that means you should go out and be an asshole. It just means that you have to be built for withstanding what the world is going to bring your way. And I thought about this Ellen DeGeneres thing, and I thought about how people were saying, well, as soon as the camera's cut, she goes, ugh. Like her whole demeanor would change, right? She'd go from like, okay, I'm a comedian, blah, 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 and then cameras are off, and I'm like, screw this. And again, I can try to see this objectively. On one side, I do see, okay, yeah, that is kind of phony, right? Like you're pretending to be this person. It's all an act. It's a reality show, but it's all an act, which makes you realize that a lot of reality TV, it is just acting, terrible acting. But then I also think about the fact that I'm like, well, I wouldn't do that, right? Like I record here, and then as soon as I cut the cameras, I don't go, oh, screw this. I hate this. This is so stupid. I'm just doing this for views so I can go and be famous and rich. Like, no. But at the same time, if I had a rough time recording and the damn thing will stop recording, the camera stops, and I'm frustrated, and I'm only human, right? So maybe after I go, imagine if I was still recording and I cut after I go, God, that was so annoying. And then I was live or something and I forgot to turn it off and I was caught, and then it goes viral. Oh my gosh, Nikki, she's fake. She's not about what she says. no, it's not that simple. I'm just human, right? So I don't know. It's hard. You have to look at things from different perspectives, and you have to consider that it's not always as black and white as we want it to be, because that's oversimplifying life. It's saying, "Oh, well, it's easy. It's this or it's that. You're either kind or you're not." And I'm like, "No. Even I have moments where I'm not the nicest person, and maybe I was frustrated about a situation, but then I also try to backtrack. This is where I try to take accountability. You know, if I'm talking to like a customer service rep and I'm kind of frustrated about the situation, and I'll say, "Hey, listen, I'm sorry. I'm not upset at you. I'm just frustrated about this problem. I'm not mad at you." And something as simple as that, people will really appreciate, because most people don't do that. So I think it is important to take accountability. Plus, people love when you take accountability. This is what I don't get, why celebrities and politicians have such a hard time taking accountability. Imagine you say, "Hey, I used to believe this, and now I no longer do. Now I stand for love and support and unity and all this stuff, and look at how I've changed. I'm better." Everyone would go, "Yeah, applause. They're learning, they're growing." But instead, they're trying to create this fake image that they were always perfect and they've always believed what they believe and they were always right, even though we can pull up evidence of when they said otherwise. So yeah, there's a fine line between being human and then having this fake facade. I think you have to think about that. And I don't know. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think about the whole Ellen DeGeneres thing? Do you think she's a nice person, or do you think it's all for views? Is it all for camera? I think about this too. I wrote this down as a caregiver. I'm a babysitter. I take care of so many children. Sometimes I rotate between 6 or 7 families, which means it's usually about 2 children in each family. So I'm seeing all these different children. And when they're really young, you have to almost be on, right? "Hi, how are you?" And you're doing that little high-pitched voice. And, "Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. You built a tower? Wow." And you're doing all this. Like, it is kind of fake and phony, which I also have my critiques about that. I think we go overboard, and children pick up on that fakeness. They know you're being weird and fake. You should just be honest with them. But I feel like because I'm not the parent, I have to come into these families and I have to be like the happy babysitter. And even if I'm having a rough day, and at the end of it, sometimes I leave and I go, "Oh, that was so hard." But it's not because I don't love the kids. I'm not like faking my role. It's not like I'm faking that I like the kids or I like what I do. It's just that I'm human and I'm tired, and sometimes, and I think anyone can relate to that at any job. Like, sometimes even if you love what you do, you're going to have days where you just feel like, man, that was so hard to get through today. I really felt like I had to push through it. And I had to try to convince people that I was having a good day, even though I wasn't. And yeah, it can be exhausting. So when your face drops after the camera shuts off, I don't think that's necessarily an indication that that person is fake. But then I think about this fakeness in LA. I'm looking down my notes here. I think this is the last thing I want to talk about, because I've been talking a lot here. There's this culture in LA. I think anyone who's been to LA or have seen influencers from Hollywood or have been here, live here, they know that there's this fakeness culture. And I, as someone who lives here, I see it a lot, and I am very uncomfortable with it, and I pick up on it very quickly when I'm having an interaction and I'm talking to someone. They're going, "Yeah, oh yeah, oh really, oh that's crazy." And you're like, what is happening? What are you even, you're not even listening to me. Why am I talking to you? And I kind of walk away, because I just don't like fake interactions. If you don't like me, I'd rather someone say, "Oh, I don't think we're going to get along. We're very different," and have them walk away. I could respect someone doing that, but it's the fakeness. And I know it's not just in LA. I know actually pretty commonly in American culture, especially, I don't want to shame on women particularly, but a lot of women that I have interacted with in the US almost have this, yeah, and they kind of fake. You can hear that it's a little higher pitch, it's a little bit fake. Their voice is a little bit fake, and then after they walk away, they go, catch up with their friends. They go, "Oh my gosh, I can't stand her. I can't stand her. She's just ugh." You're like, then why did you act like you like her? I've never understood that, and I've been in groups of women before where there's this one girl that you can tell maybe she's a little kooky, a little different. And then the second she walks away, everybody's like, oh my gosh, did you see the way she was dressed or the way she was this or that? And you're like, oh God, I don't know. That stuff is really weird for me. I don't like it. It makes me realize that I can't trust that person. And maybe they are a nice person, because I think a lot of that fakeness comes from insecurity. They're trying to cover up their own insecurity by projecting on someone else. Again, I talked about that earlier. When people are upset or mad or negative, they're really just projecting their own hurt, anger, frustration with themselves, the world, whatever, onto someone else, because it's easier than to deal with your own baggage, right? It's easier to critique someone else's life than it is to deal with your own problems. That's always going to be the case. So, I don't know, like part of me, I have my frustrations with people that I meet who are very fake. But then I'm also like kind of sympathetic. Maybe not empathetic, but I'm sympathetic to the fact that I'm like, man, it must be hard for you. You must be going through something. But what do you think? I'm curious to hear your thoughts as always, what I'm talking about. I think I'm going to cap it here. My camera's blinking, the battery. I think that's my sign. I need to go. I hope you have a great week. And Halloween is coming up. Are you dressing up? Are you into Halloween? I'm very excited. I love Halloween, so I'm very excited during this spooky season. And yeah, I'll be back for more.